So welcome, and thank you again so much for joining us. So Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, begins today and continues until sundown on December 6th. This is a holy season for millions around the world, many of whom, like many of us, are looking for light in a landscape that seems all too dark. What are we facing? All of us face not only individual issues in our own lives, but also uncertainty about the future, growing political and social divisions, continuing COVID pandemic with new variants we are now reading about, economic instability, environmental fears, problems just on a global scale sometimes seem just insoluble. We need this holiday season. We need it now to remind us that the light returns and miracles happen. This Sunday is also the first Sunday of Advent, which is the beginning of the Christian liturgical year. Advent usually does not get a lot of press. We just finished Thanksgiving. We are zooming into the holiday season, the shopping season. But Advent has a rich spiritual tradition worth talking about. It's a season in which we prepare for the coming of the Christ. It's a very active season. It's a time of preparation, reflection, gestation, a time of waiting in a dynamic sense for the miracle of birth, of rebirth to happen. It's a season in which we prepare for the coming of the Christ. Now, that means different things to different people. Many believe we're waiting for the birth of that singular Savior, that individual. Others, with a more metaphysical view, celebrate the coming of what we call our Christ consciousness, our own awakening to the divine at our very essence. Either way, this is a season in which we prepare for the miraculous, our own awakening to the truth that the holy is at work in us and through us and around us. Hanukkah is also a story of miracles, of transformation, and of divine deliverance. Now, there are two ways to look at the Hanukkah story, but first, let me tell it to you. In the 2nd century BCE, the land now called Israel was part of the Syrian Greek Empire. The Jewish people were subject to King Antiochus IV, a despot, and a tyrant who wanted to wipe out all Jewish religion, all Jewish thought, any evidence at all of this Jewish tradition. He wanted to impose a common religion throughout his empire. He destroyed the temple. He refused to permit observance of Jewish practice and custom. So a Jewish rebellion crystallized around a leader named Judah Maccabee, or Judah the Strong. It was not a large force. However, although Antiochus sent tens of thousands of soldiers, the much smaller force of Maccabees defeated him. If you want to read about this, you can read about this in the book of Maccabees. It's in what's commonly called the Apocrypha, and it is a wonderful story which you can find there. So that is the first miracle celebrated during Hanukkah, the defeat of a larger force by a dedicated group fighting for the right to worship in their own way, and indeed fighting for the very survival of their entire way of life, their entire tradition. The second miracle, and the primary miracle celebrated during Hanukkah, unfolded when the Maccabees returned to the temple to cleanse and rededicate it. The Syrians and the Greeks had defiled it, clearing out the idols, destroying the altar. Because the gold menorah had been stolen by the Syrians, the returning Jews made one of cheaper metal. However, when they began to light it, they found only enough purified oil for one day. It was not enough. However, in faith, they lit it nonetheless, just enough oil for one day. However, the oil continued to burn for 8 days until new oil was available and purified. In memory of this miracle, Jews today light the menorah for 8 days, celebrating the miracle of the oil, God's message that they were delivered out of the darkness. They were delivered from bondage. They were delivered to a place where they could live their lives and celebrate their own traditions. The first way to interpret this story is a miracle sent from God. He made 1 day's worth of oil burn for 8 days, a supernatural event as rewards for the Jews' faith, or obedience. Now, surely the burning oil can be seen that way. That's what a lot of people think of when they think of a miracle, an agency outside ourselves performing a supernatural and unnatural and amazing event, inspiring faith and belief in a force unseen that just intervenes in our lives. There's another way to look at this story, and I think it's this way that gives the story its lasting meaning and resonance for so many. On a symbolic level, stories like this remind all of us that at the end of a long darkness, light is coming. At the end of a period of oppression and suffering, light appeared and remained. The Hasidic master Yehuda Aryeh Leib Alter taught that the lesson of Hanukkah is not that Jews need to light the candle, but that our place is to be the candle. The Hanukkah message is that we are to bring light to places of vast darkness. As he puts it in discussing Hanukkah, a human being is created to light up this world. The book of Proverbs teaches us that the soul of man is the lamp of God. What this means is that ultimately our task is not to light candles, but to simply be that light ourselves, to be the candle, bringing light to darkness where we can. We have the potential to be the light that brings the presence and love of God back into a world that sometimes seems to have gone dark. That includes our own worlds. In the past few months, we've all seen, and we've all done it ourselves, seen family and friends facing challenges and transitions, and we've done it ourselves. It's been a very tough year. Death, COVID, sickness, job loss, dislocation, family disruption, all these are disturbing and challenging and way too common in all our lives. I've seen many friends and family just with a dark cloud kind of hovering over them. Things have seemed so difficult. The lesson of Hanukkah is that light continues to shine in dark places if we take the step to light the first candle. As Michael Strassfeld writes, in lighting our menorah, we ignite the flame in our souls, the spark that cannot be extinguished, that will burn not for 8 days, but for eternity. That's important. We are not passive observers of divine action in our lives, whether we call them miracles or not. We are co-creators. When we are the light, we are co-creating. When we commit our energies, our best minds, our biggest hearts to being the light in dark places, that is when miracles can unfold. Before that oil burned, that oil that was only meant to burn for 1 day, before it burned for 8 days, the Jews lighting it had to have that light in their own hearts to light it, knowing that this miracle could happen. You bring the light to the situation that you are in, and miracles unfold. The Maccabees did not sit back and ask God to eliminate the Syrians. They didn't look at the empty menorah and ask God to make oil appear and burn. They committed body and soul fully and completely in faith and in the certainty that God was with them. That is at least one of the lessons of this story. Co-creation is not for those who are only half in. Perhaps a miracle is not a big show put on by the divine for us to observe in awe and amazement so that we'll believe in a power larger than us. Perhaps a miracle is those moments when we decide without fear and with certainty of who we are that we can be the light. So many of you are familiar with A Course in Miracles and its own definition of a miracle, which I love. The Course teaches that a miracle is a shift in perception from fear to love, from what is unreal to what is real. The Course teaches miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. The real miracle is the love that inspires them. In this sense, everything that comes from love is a miracle. The peace of God comes in knowing what is real, and that is love. That's it. This view of what a miracle is challenges us to be that love, to be co-creators and miracle makers, reflecting the truth of ourselves as perfect and beloved children of God. The truth of our essence is that we are made from love, and every time we make the choice to live from that knowledge, we participate in a miracle. And sometimes it can be so hard. I mean, sometimes it just seems like the darkness is going to swallow us up. I've had those moments myself. But in those moments, we each have the opportunity to decide to be that light, even when it's hard. That's the time when we most need to do it, to realize that the holy is always there, that we always have that opportunity to be co-creators, to be the candle and be the light. In this holiday season, we give ourselves permission to look for that miracle, to be miracle makers for ourselves and for others. When we make that shift in perception, when we realize that even no matter how we feel, we contain that light that will not go out, that it is the same light carried by me and carried by each of you, we experience and we share a more hopeful world. As A Course in Miracles teaches, love waits on welcome, not on time. We don't have to wait for the right time, the convenient time, when we're not busy, when it's just a better time, when we're not mad, when we're not hungry or working or otherwise occupied. We simply say yes. We simply say, I welcome that opportunity to be love. This is a truth we know early on, and which, as we grow up, we sometimes just forget. We are born unafraid, ready to love and be loved just as we are. That complete and wonderful soul is still there. It is still within each of us, intact and perfect, just waiting for us to take a breath and awaken and wipe away the years of barriers and roadblocks and experiential stuff that we accumulate and carry with us like a bag of rocks we never lay down. If we are lucky, we meet those along the way who show us our true nature, who act as what Wayne Mueller called strong companions and clear mirrors to reflect back to us this truth. That's one of the values of a community like One World, is we can each be, for each other, clear mirrors and strong companions, reflecting back to each other the truth of who each one of us is, even if sometimes we don't remember it and we don't feel it. In this season of miracles, the lesson we learn is that we each have the ability to bring that light of miraculous joy into the lives of each other, into the lives of other people. As we choose to see the truth in ourselves and each other, we release judgment, fear, and assumptions. This holiday season reminds us that our perceptions of peace working through us can translate into a world of peace. Look around at your favorite holiday story. Isn't that the plot line in each of them? It's a shift in perceptions. Isn't that what our favorite, for example, Christmas stories are about? This new understanding that the true miracle of the holiday is for us to put aside fear and judgment and simply reach out in love. It is so interesting to see all the Christmas stories really do nothing more than teach us there is a new way to see, a new way to perceive. And sometimes it's just the energy of the holiday that puts us in that place. Look at A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, one of my favorites. Ebenezer Scrooge turns from a miserly old curmudgeon into a loving and a giving soul purely by a change in perception brought about by the visions given him that Christmas Eve night. We all remember the scene in which he told his first visitor, Jacob Marley, "You were always a good man of business, Jacob," the highest accolade you can give. "You were always a good man of business, Jacob." The ghost wailed and rattled his chains and said, "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. He had managed to see life differently. So how about that other classic, It's a Wonderful Life? Old movie, great movie, classic. So here's George Bailey, who thought that his life was small and meaningless because he's just in this little town. He had given up his dreams. He felt trapped in this small town life. So he decides to commit suicide. And a very unlikely angel is sent to show him the truth of who he is and what he really means to other people. He realized the amazing gift that he had been given just in his ordinary life and the many loving connections he had in his family and in his community. He realized what a difference his being there made. The same is true for each of us, and sometimes we don't even take the time to think about it. So in this time of miracles, let's ask ourselves, how do we look at our world? How do you look at your world? Do you realize the difference that you make? This holiday season invites us to re-examine our own judgments, dig deep for the truth of who we are, and share it with others. How do we shift our focus from fear and separation to love and to peace? This season reminds us that it is our birthright to be miracle makers ourselves. Let's take this season to realize, to live the truth that every connection we make is a moment in which we can be a miracle to each other. So, have a blessed Hanukkah as we move forward into the rest of this holiday season. I look forward to sharing it with you. Thanks again.